how's it going? I feel like sometimes we take looking for outfit inspirations a little too literally. We'll look to places like Instagram or Pinterest or whichever social platform to check out what other people are wearing. But you don't have to just look at clothes for inspiration. If style is a form of art, then your stylistic vision can also come from other art forms. Especially these days when I hear things like you can tell somebody's screen time based on their outfits, or how you have to be a little bit careful when you're recreating Pinterest outfits just so you're not straight up copying and pasting. It just gets me wondering, where then can I get some fresh style inspirations from? So today I want to talk about 5 different areas you can draw style inspirations from if you suffer from individuality complex like I do. And these are going to be areas or territories outside of your normal fashion and style world. I don't really know why, but I've been sticking to the number 5 a lot lately. It seems to be working well, seems like you guys like it, and I think it's a good balance between simplicity and variety. So the first area or territory I want to talk about is mythical or fantasy or fictional characters. And maybe it sounds a little bit strange, but where I got this idea from is from this YouTube channel called Silky Mochi. And the content creator of that channel, Melissa, has created this beautiful style system on dark aesthetics that draws inspirations from 5 different creatures. So she calls them the dark aesthetics muses or archetypes. I've made a whole video on this topic a few months ago, so if you want to learn about the system in more depth and if you want to see how I would incorporate these elements into my own style, then I'll provide a link to the video up here for you. Now, what I really loved about this system is the idea of drawing inspiration from figures that don't actually exist in real life. Because so often I find myself comparing my external appearance to celebrities or fashion influencers or whomever I draw inspiration from. Like, I'm not tall or skinny enough to wear that, or she doesn't have the same body type as me, I don't have the same face card as her, kind of thing. So drawing inspiration from more abstract ideas just helps prevent some of those negative thoughts on self-image, and I also think it makes it easier to focus on specific elements of style. For example, I'm really drawn to the siren archetype in Melissa's system because of my love for minimal details and long silhouettes, lustrous fabrics like silk and satin, and I'm especially a fan of flowy textures that mimic the water and the ocean. So the siren archetype is really suitable for my own preferences. So thinking about these elemental details just allows for a little more creativity, I think, on how exactly you want to incorporate them into your own style. And it obviously doesn't have to be dark aesthetics inspired. I mean, I've used Melissa's system as an example because it just paints such a good picture of what I'm trying to explain here. But you can use a regular fairy instead of a dark fairy as your inspiration, or you could try to use a fictional character from the Victorian era instead of vampire, etc. So it's less about getting fixated on naming what that figure or inspiration is for you, but more so about identifying the different elemental details that you like. I also think Alyssa Beltempo here on YouTube does a phenomenal job of picking out elements of style from outfit inspo pics and turning them into her own. I just personally found it a little more beneficial to focus on mythical or fantasy or fictional characters rather than looking at actual outfit photos, just because I'm less distracted by things like brands or what exact item they're wearing in the photo and stuff like that. The second area I want to talk about is photos or paintings. With photos, there's rules to good composition that makes a photo more visually interesting, and I found this article called 28 Composition Techniques That'll Improve Your Photos, so I'll provide a link in the description. And a lot of the techniques on this list are actually applicable to our outfits. For example, techniques like rule of thirds, or using different patterns or textures, or finding particular color combinations, juxtaposition. Like, these are some of the more obvious examples. And then there are also techniques that might seem a little less intuitive at first, but we can still apply them to our style. One that I particularly liked from this list was leaving negative space, because I think there's such beauty found in the simplicity and the emptiness of having a blank canvas of an outfit. You can also tweak some of these rules. For example, the left to right rule, you can tweak to top to bottom rule, since in a photograph, our eyes naturally move from left to right, but in an outfit, our eyes move from top to bottom. You can also choose to either follow or deliberately break these rules. In my last video on style tips, I talked about how simply flipping your top and bottom colors will instantly add a little more visual interest and an unexpected twist to an outfit. So that's a really good example of deliberately breaking the rule. I also think that paintings are a great resource to find different color combination ideas, and they provide such amazing visualization for what an effective focal point looks like in a composition. So whenever you come across an artwork that grabs your attention for whatever reason, snap a photo of it or save it onto your device, and then you can look at it later for compositional cues that can be translated into your outfits. The third area I want to talk about is nature, and this is kind of related to the last one because I think from both of them you can get a lot of ideas about different color and texture combinations. But for me, nature is specifically about two things: movement and imperfection. Photos or paintings are man-made or curated at the end of the day, unless you're capturing like a purely naturesque, National Geographic type of scenery. But they're still shots or captured moments in the end. But seeing nature with your own eyes is also about movement. Like right now, it's fall, so if I look out the window, I might see leaves falling from the tree to the ground. Or if I'm standing by the water, I'll see the continuous flow of water. There's also sounds involved. Like there's so much more to nature when you're experiencing it firsthand versus when you're looking at it through a captured photo or a painting on a canvas. And we can draw inspiration from this movement because we are also moving around in our outfits and our clothes all day. I mean, one of the reasons why I don't always like looking at outfit photos is because it doesn't encapsulate that feeling of continuity. Like I have pieces in my closet or details that I like simply because of the way things move, and it definitely affects my decision on what kind of silhouettes I want to wear or my fabric choices, not only in the types but also in their weight. And I think that sometimes these details aren't always captured in a photo. Another detail with nature that I think is worth paying attention to is imperfection. And this could come in the form of different and unexpected color or texture combinations or irregularity found in shapes. I just think it's fascinating how all of these imperfections make up something that looks really perfect at the end of the day. And I guess this is sort of related to the wabi-sabi philosophy. And this is something that can be incorporated quite literally into our outfits and our style in the little details, like putting together unexpected elements of colors or texture, or creating more of a lived-in effect through the patina of certain materials. But I think it's also something that can be incorporated philosophically. So going back to the whole wabi-sabi concept and the idea of creating a lived-in look, this could mean you're deliberately opting for well-loved pieces instead of buying something new, or you're mending or repairing your well-worn items, etc. So with nature, there's obvious visual elements, but there's also some philosophical elements that we can draw inspiration from. The next area or territory of inspiration I want to talk about is movies, or any other media really that you consume, like literature, magazines, or even anime or games. And I'm not talking about specific characters here, but more so the overarching theme or mood. If you think about movies, for example, certain filmmakers have a very consistent and distinctive styles. Think Wes Anderson or Tim Burton or Christopher Nolan. And all their movies have this recognizable overarching mood as a common denominator or a through line, and these are associated with or created by literal visual elements like colors, use of texture, lighting, composition, etc. But as the audience, it's never about these individual elements that we recognize unless, you're analyzing the film. But what we as the audience recognize is this overall feeling or mood from the combination of all of these visual elements together that supports the storyline. Now, why I think this is related is because the more I think about it, the more I'm realizing that having good style is not just about putting together harmonious and visually interesting outfits, but it's about consistency and having your own story and your own through line. I mean, if you think about style as a form of expression, it's really about communicating who you are. So there's bound to be some level of consistency and an overarching theme. And since we're talking about style and outfits here, I think that media with some sort of a visual component like movies is just easier to draw inspiration from. But things like literature can also work if you're strongly drawn to a particular style of a writer and you think that it helps create an overall mood for their work. And I know this is something that's more abstract and perhaps a little more difficult to grasp at first, but if you find yourself really drawn to a certain filmmaker's style, or if you really enjoy reading books from the same author, just think about what the overall mood of their style really is. And then you can start thinking more in detail about the visual elements that contribute to this overall mood, whether it's colors or textures or use of space or lines or lighting and shadows. My personal inspiration is this Korean movie director named Chan-Wook, and his work it's a blend of dark themes and usually pretty morally ambiguous, and there's always a dash of black humor thrown in there. And in terms of visual elements, he uses a lot of dark but rich color themes, lots of shadows and high contrast that creates a sense of drama. But movement-wise, it's quite slow, so it's not like exciting or intense. And I would describe his style to have this dark and dreamy quality to it. And that's exactly what I want to emulate with my own style. It's that dark and dreamy quality. So I might opt for a darker color theme or long and flowy silhouettes. I might try out some lighter fabrics to enhance the flowiness more. Or I might try to mix and match different fabrics to create a sense of drama. So the ideas about how to create this overall mood with your own style starts to flow once you can identify what that mood is exactly. And it just requires a little bit of analysis and articulation. But once you narrow it down to a few words, then attaching literal visual elements becomes a little more tangible. And then the last area to draw inspiration from that I want to talk about is emotions and personality traits. And again, this is a little more abstract and sort of relates to the last topic of figuring out the overall mood that you want to portray. So how I decided to go about this is by looking at all of my style muses and inspirations. And I know it sounds a little bit counterintuitive because we're talking about ways to step away from looking at other people's styles. But when I placed the photos of all of my style muses side by side, again, I noticed that there's a through line and it can be described in more emotional or personality terms. Like there's this dark and mysterious quality to it. It's quiet and reserved, serene, maybe even a little bit nonchalant. And then again, from these words, I can develop how to portray these emotions or traits into my own style. So that could mean a darker color palette again, no real exaggeration in silhouette, so I want to keep things pretty simple, long and flowy, maybe something that's a bit undone and unstructured and loose. So as I was doing this exercise, it was really interesting to see how similar elements start to emerge between the overarching mood of the films that I like and my style inspirations. So things like dark colors or long and flowy silhouettes are some of those common denominators. So again, once the mood or the emotions or the traits are defined in words, you can come up with more concrete ideas on how to translate them into your own style. And I think it just helps bring more clarity around what exactly that you're drawn to that you haven't necessarily been able to bring into your own style before. And like it was the case for me, you might start seeing the through line across all of the areas of inspiration from the different creatures or characters or paintings or photos or movies or somebody else's style. And it could really help define what you're aesthetically drawn to more clearly and what your style personality really looks like apart from what just looks nice and flattering, and that could be a glimpse into your stylistic vision. I hope you liked the video and it gave you something to think about. Thank you always for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Until then, stay unique and stay gorgeous.